All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got about 15 people with us, and we've always got a number who join in the first few minutes. So I'm sure some additional folks will call in. Thank everyone for calling in today for our May monthly CISMA webinar. So today we are super happy to have Dan Quinn with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to give us an update on tegus in Southwest Florida. I was going to talk about the population dynamics and what they've been doing to manage those populations that we are aware of. And then we've got some FIST and CISMA updates to share with folks. So just a quick reminder for anyone who's not really familiar with our program, the Florida Invasive Species Partnership is a partnership of agencies and organizations across the state working to address the threat of invasive species by bridging the gap across land boundaries and engaging the public in outreach and education. The cooperative invasive species management areas work regionally to address issues from prevention, early detection, rapid response, monitoring, management, and education and outreach as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Give me just a moment while I hand over controls to Dan and make sure he is able to hear us. All right, Dan, are you there?
Hang on just a second. I'm trying to get my controls back so the audio can go through my computer.
All right, perfect. We can hear you. We can hear you pretty well.
All right, well, I'm not sure what happened to those, so I can just talk through the phone here if that's all right.
That should be fine. I can hear you pretty well.
Okay. So thank you for having me on today, Emily. As Emily mentioned, I'm with Florida Fish and Wildlife. I'm the lead non-native biologist for Southwest Florida. This is a new office that was started in 2017. And we've really been tasked with figuring out and dealing with any emerging issues that are ongoing. Sorry, this thing is advancing on me already. Oh. Sorry, hang on. I'm not sure why it advanced there. That's fine. I'll just keep going with it. So today I wanted to talk about a couple of the Tegu populations that are in Southwest Florida, one that's well known in Hillsborough County and one that's emerging in Charlotte County. And so I'll go ahead and just dive right on in. The Argentine black and white Tegu is, as the name would imply, native to South America. It's a habitat generalist. It lives in a lot of different environments and habitats, including coastal ecosystems, rainforests, and highlands. I'm trying to advance to the next slide. Okay. As far as identification, for those of you who may not be familiar with this species, they have black and white bands across their body. They have green heads on them when they're juveniles, and this green head disappears after the first couple of months typically. But you can see on the bottom left picture what that looks like on these when they first come out of the egg. They can reach upwards of 4 feet in length. And how you tell males and females apart once they're large enough is the males will get these really large jowls that you see like in the picture at the top there. And they'll also have nodules on the sides of the vent on their undersides that you can feel, that kind of feel like little small peas or something of that size. And so you can't really tell the difference between the sexes without doing some sort of a necropsy until they reach that larger reproductive age. In terms of their general behavior, they are diurnal. They're active during the daytime, same as most reptiles and lizards. They are typically found on or under the ground, which is one way that we can actually differentiate what the members of the public are calling us about. A lot of the other animals that we deal with, a lot of the other large lizards, are either lizards that are prone to climbing trees or buildings, or are very prone to swimming in water or being near water that they escape into. Tegus, while they can climb and they can swim, we just typically don't find them doing those kinds of activities. So they're going to be mostly just on the ground or, again, under the ground, using either their own burrows that they construct or burrows that other animals construct. They're also active foragers, which is actually very beneficial for us and the management purposes, because it means we can set out baited traps, and they'll go out in search of the bait there, and are much more likely to be trapped than more of a sit and wait predator. Seasonally, they do show different behaviors. This is something that's sort of unique to tegus as well in the state. So they're not active all year round, like say a Nile monitor or iguana species are. In February, the males will emerge from brumation or reptile hibernation, and that's when they start feeding again. It's when eventually they'll start finding mates and mating, usually April through May, so now would be the mating season for them. And then in the summer, the eggs are going to be hatching, and in late October typically is when we are unable to continue our trapping efforts because they enter brumation again. And so they're typically going underground when they're doing that. In terms of reproduction, they reach reproductive age at about 2 to 3 years, and they'll reproduce once per year. It's possible they may reproduce more than that, especially in warmer parts of the state, but we don't currently have any evidence that shows double clutching in this species. The clutch size on average is about 35 eggs per clutch, and they display an interesting physiological trait called reproductive endothermy. This is something that I just think is very interesting. Reptiles, as I'm sure most people know, are ectotherms or cold-blooded. But during the reproductive time period, they're actually capable of physiologically upregulating their body temperature, not to the same extent as, say, a bird or a mammal, but certainly above ambient temperatures, which is a very interesting little factoid about this animal, and maybe one of the reasons that it's such a concern to us and it's spread beyond southern Florida. In terms of their diet, tegus are omnivores. They are also generalists. They eat a wide variety of different vegetation, fruits, insects, small vertebrates, things of that nature, pretty much anything they can get their mouths on for the most part. We do know from studies that have been done, at least in Hillsborough County, that they have been known to prey upon gopher tortoise hatchlings. The picture you see in the middle there is the remnants of a gopher tortoise hatchling, and I believe there were at least 5 found in the gut contents of a study that was done up in that population in Hillsborough County. So obviously that's a major concern for the state, being that it's a state-listed species, and it makes them a particular invasive concern. Another reason that they're a particular invasive concern, and this is something that I touched on earlier, is that we believe that there is scientific evidence that demonstrates that tegus are possibly capable of surviving in areas much further north than South Florida. And so this is from a modeling paper from a subjournal of science. It's Jarnovich et al. 2018, and in this they did habitat suitability models for Argentine black and white tegus, and that's what you're seeing here are these maps. The darker brown areas are areas where they're more likely to survive. And so as you can see, even in the more conservative model below, it still has tegus possibly reaching being limited by the Georgia fall line and even possibly getting up into the Carolinas. And the model above shows them getting all the way up even into the Virginias. And so that's a big major concern, obviously, if they're eating native wildlife and they're able to spread to that extent. And that's why they're a priority for Florida Fish and Wildlife. And so just to summarize the invasive concerns of this animals, again, they have high fecundity. They're able to reproduce in fairly high numbers. They're habitat and dietary generalists, and their cold tolerance, both behavioral, they're seeking thermal refuge during the winter months, and physiologically, they're able to upregulate their body temperature during certain times of year. They can also survive temperatures of 35 degrees Fahrenheit just intrinsically. So that's the largest concerns that we have overall. And in these pictures here, you can see there's a tegu that's eating an alligator egg, photo credit to UF IFAS there. And they are able to, or that should be APHIS, sorry. They are able to probably prey on other species eggs, of course, any kind of ground nesting birds, the American crocodile. There's no reason they wouldn't go for those as well. On the pictures on the right, you can actually see the animal using a gopher tortoise burrow, and if you look carefully, you can see a gopher tortoise in that lower picture in the burrow. So they're probably going in there searching for food from all the commensal species that live in there, and possibly even driving the gopher tortoises out of those burrows or eating their young. So in terms of management with Florida Fish and Wildlife, what we focus on is population surveillance first off. So when it comes to surveillance, we want to know where these animals are on the landscape. And so we really rely heavily on public reports on private land. So anytime people are seeing these animals on their land, we really want to promote taking a picture, noting the location, and then giving us a call at the exotic species hotline using the I've Got One website or the reporting app. We also use wildlife cameras, usually baited wildlife cameras like you see in the top right picture there. As far as trapping goes, it's really fairly simple. We pretty much rely solely on live trapping as the most effective option for removing these animals. Even in areas where they're very dense, it's very rare that you'll actually see one running around. So baiting a trap and checking them regularly has been shown, I think, to be the most effective option that we have. We bait these traps generally just with chicken eggs, and the chicken eggs are a very cost-effective option. We usually crack one out in front of the trap and then put a whole one towards the back. And we've been able to be fairly successful, as have our partners. What you're seeing here is a map of the entire state of Florida and the different confirmed or verified Tegu reports that we've received through all time. So there's a lot of different points on this map, and I just want to point out that not all of these are reproducing populations. Tegus are very common in the pet trade, and so a lot of these dots may just be in high density population areas where people are more likely to have these animals, where maybe they're more likely to or prone to escape just because of the propagular pressure of being in an area where there's just a lot of people and a lot of exotic pet owners. As far as we can tell, there's 3 reproducing populations in this state. Probably the largest population is in Miami-Dade County. This population is predominantly in the Homestead area. I'm not going to be talking about that population today. That's not part of my particular response region. Instead, I'm going to be talking about the other 2. I've already mentioned Hillsborough County. This population is relatively large in extent, but seems to be fairly low in density. And then finally, the new and emerging population in Charlotte County, specifically in Punta Gorda. This population seems to be very small, but relatively dense, and I'll get into that more here in just a minute. So this is just a zoomed in look. I'm going to start by talking about the Hillsborough population. This population's been around for probably some time. We've been doing work on this as a state agency for quite a while. You can see all the different points that we have on this map in that county. It's, for those of you who may be aware of the area, it's just east of Tampa in a smaller, more rural area called Riverview, Florida. This is what the habitat looks like in the Hillsborough County lands where we do a lot of our work. It's very scrubby habitat, lots of nice loose sandy soils for burrowing or for using other animals' burrows. So as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work in this area. I'm not going to get into everything that's ever been done by FWC or our partners over time, but I'll talk about some of the more recent things and then kind of what we're doing now. The recent research and management that we've focused on has been increased canvassing and outreach to the public in the area, increasing surveys for tegus on the landscape out there, especially on county-owned lands, and then just continuing to expand management efforts. So the card you see in front of you, have you seen Argentine black and white tegus? Those are actually mailers that we've mailed out to thousands of residents in the most affected areas of the county. And you can see the different county managed lands outlined in green, and then the lands where we've really focused tegu management efforts in the different filled in parcels of land. Last year, we contracted with a nonprofit organization, a research organization called Wildlands Conservation based out of Tampa. On the left, you'll see a map, and each one of the white dots there is a different baited camera trapping location. This was just one of the sites that they went to. They set out 100 cameras in as best of a grid pattern as they could in order to try to do some population analyses. They did this at 4 different sites on Hillsborough County property, and that was a grand total of 400 cameras for this intensive surveying. They also did range assessments using 180 cameras on other properties where we hadn't reported these animals before. This is what those camera traps look like. So you can see on the left the camera, and they standardized the traps to be about 10 feet away from those cameras. The bait was, we used both olfactory and visual stimulus. The idea was that the red egg would look appealing, and then they also added a dehydrated egg that they would put on the ground as well to increase chances of tegus being able to find it using just smell. We also did use real whole eggs in addition to these later on in the study. Here's some of the pictures that Wildlands was able to get. Anytime they got a picture of an animal, they would set out traps and try to remove it. And so we had several tegus, and it's always kind of hard to say if you're getting multiple pictures in the same general area, if it's the same animal, if it's different animals. However, Wildlands Conservation was able to determine as best they could that a lot of these animals were the same, and that we were actually able to pretty much capture every single one that we got a picture of. And so that was a total of 7 captured tegus on Hillsborough County land. And they also tried out different trap types to see if anything would work, and I've got a picture on the next slide that can kind of show that. So we had 3 different traps. 2 of them are displayed here. One is just a typical wire cage trap. That one, I believe, is a tomahawk. And then another one was a PVC style trap. Unfortunately, in this photo, these traps were resting and were not being used at that time. They were just not able to check them the next day for whatever reason, and so they had to close them so that they didn't leave animals out there for more than 24 hours in a trap. But they did see this tegu going into this PVC trap. Unfortunately, none were ever actually captured in one of those. The rest were all captured in those wire tomahawk traps. In addition to our contractors, we also had our own trap lines out there, and we used volunteers to man these. Unfortunately, my staff and my office is based about 2 hours away, so we weren't able to do that on a daily basis. We really relied on volunteers, and I think our volunteers kind of demonstrated just how potentially useful they can be. We were able to capture 5 tegus just using, again, volunteer time. We had 1,774.5 trap nights, and that ended up being a catch per unit effort of about 0.002. This is about a factor of magnitude less than the Miami-Dade population. And I think what this is telling us, especially in regards to the camera trapping that Wildlands did, is that the population just does not seem to be very dense in this county. It seems to be very dispersed and just again, low density at these sites. So last year, as I mentioned, we used Wildlands Conservation. We're now continuing to see how far these animals have gone. The cameras from Wildlands didn't really see any animals in any other sites, but we know from previous records that they are out there on some of the private properties, and so there's no reason to think that they might not be spreading to some of the other public lands. So in 2019, we're contracting with an organization called Predator Bird Services, and they are setting out trap lines based on a whole variety of habitat factors to see if maybe those tegus are out in some of those other areas, and to continue removing them in the areas we know they are. And so I have kind of a blown up map of those different trap lines that we have set up. They'll be doing these throughout the active season this year. So those are the updates I have currently for the Hillsborough County population. The next population that I want to talk about is the one and the emerging one in Charlotte County in Punta Gorda, Florida. So the area we're going to be talking about is this pretty small red circle that I have on our map right here. You'll see that red circle throughout the rest of this presentation to give you an idea of where we are and kind of the extent of this population. On April 28th of 2018, we received this photo of a tegu that was crossing a dirt road. We had a couple of historic records of a tegu being spotted there. We thought maybe it was just one animal that had evaded capture. But all of a sudden, after getting this photo, I got another phone call from a gentleman saying that he had spotted several of these animals up in that area. And something you might note is that just south of this red circle is the Babcock Webb Wildlife Management Area. It's one of our largest wildlife management areas in the state. This is literally happening right on the edge of that WMA, and it's something that obviously creates an even bigger concern for an emerging population. When we heard that there were multiple of these things, we went out, we started asking members of the public, we started sending out our mailers again. So this is what the mailer looks like on the backside, and our US Postal Service every door direct mailer option. You can see in the blue highlight there where we were able to send one of these out to, and we sent over 1,700 mailers out in one day to all of those locations highlighted in blue in all the surrounding areas. So now we're zoomed in on that red circle, and you can see we have 3 roads of interest right here. We have Washington Loop on the north end, Vermont on the south end, and then Bronco Road. That's that dirt path that Tegu was crossing. When we sent out those mailers, and when we were able to look at all the historic evidence and everything, and really sum everything up, this is what we saw in terms of the Tegus reported by the public that were verified. And again, most of these happened after we sent out those mailers and started talking to people. They started sending us a lot of photos. Now, it's always kind of a question if you know, some of these dots are one animal or multiple animals. And we know, though, that there were at least 4, because 4 of them were deceased that were reported to us. So that was obviously big news, knowing that there's more than one of these out there, and there's probably even more. So then last year in June, this is about halfway through the Tegu's active season, we were able to finally finish mobilizing and start setting traps out. All the places that you see in blue here are the places where we had traps set. We were doing this along county roads. We're doing it on private property where homeowners allowed us. We were also loaning traps out, which isn't shown on this, this map here. But we did this trapping from June 19th to October 17th. And not every location did we trap every day. Some of these traps we moved around as we learned more or found better spots. But I have some summary statistics to kind of make it a little easier to understand. Every place that you see a gold star on those points are places where we were able to successfully capture at least one tegu. But some of them we were able to capture more, of course. Here's just some pictures of the individuals we captured. We caught a fair number of small juvenile animals, but we did catch adults as well. We do know that they're reproducing there, despite just the numbers that we captured. We also found gravid females that were caught in our traps. And here's that summary information. So we spent a grand total of 72 days checking traps. We had 42 trap locations, of which 45% were successful, or 19 trap locations. And that ranged from 1 to 4 tegus removed per trap location. That's not on the same day, just at that location. In total, we removed 36 tegus in that half of an active season that we were able to start setting traps out for. The trap days was 1,764.5, and the catch per unit effort was 0.02. You might notice that's exactly a factor of magnitude higher than the Hillsborough population. And in fact, this is actually a similar catch per unit effort to Miami-Dade County, the very large and well-established population. For whatever reason, though, we're not seeing these things outside of that red circle. We're continuing to look at that, and I'll get into more of that here in just a minute. But you can see also how the month played a factor as well as it relates to the number of tegus we were able to capture, as well as the catch per unit effort. So again, this is what we did last year in 2018. And here's our how we are starting to kind of expand slowly in 2019. So before, we didn't have any traps on the south end of the road. And in Babcock Webb, we have been talking to their biologists out there, making sure they're aware of the situation and keeping their eyes peeled. We still don't have any evidence that there have been any tegus captured in those traps. We also have camera traps set out there as well. The places where you see the green stars are places where this year we've been able to successfully capture at least one tegu. And here's just a side-by-side to kind of get a sense of how we're starting to slowly expand some of that. We still run into issues with there being a lot of private property out there that we can't necessarily get access to, but we're doing the best we can to continue to expand our efforts here. So far this year alone, and we started trapping in February, we didn't catch anything, but we started to really ramp things up in April. And of course, May is not over with. And this number is actually out of date even now. We've removed 26 tegus already, and with our trap days that we've had, our catch per unit effort is currently the same as last year. And I should also mention that we have sent out more of those mailers. We just sent them out yesterday. We had a media day where we brought multiple news stations out and talked to them about this. And we've also put out some sandwich boards as well, which I believe I have a picture of here in just a second. So in the future, we're obviously interested in continuing removal of this species, and we'd like to continue to determine the extent. Again, I want to emphasize that this population seems to be very dense, but very small. It's hard to believe that they're not spread further than our current area of influence. And certainly you can see to the south, east, and even the north that there's just all kinds of space for them to potentially spread to, even west as well, but certainly they'll start running into denser human population centers there. So again, we're continuing to try to get the word out to the public, do as much outreach as we can, as efficiently as we can using those mailers. We put out now a couple of A-frame boards on some busy roadways on Vermont and Washington Loop Road, so that hopefully people will see those and know that they should call us if they see something like that crawling around their area. And we've already received a few reports today. We're still trying to see if we can verify those. So that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate giving me the time to talk about this. I'm open to any questions that you guys have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was a really helpful overview. So we do have some time. We have a few minutes if anyone has questions. Quick note, you are muted, so make sure you unmute yourself. And or you can also alternatively use the chat box if you'd like to write in a question there. So with that, I have a question. Is there any way, have you guys looked into the possibility of being able to locate them while they are in that hibernation phase?
Yeah, so there has been some radio telemetry studies that have been done on these. However, I know the one in Hillsborough County, they had a lot of issues with transmitters falling off. We suspected that they were hanging out in gopher tortoise burrows, as you might think, but when we've scoped gopher tortoise burrows in that area where we know these things live, we really haven't seen them in there. So I think what would be needed would be more radio telemetry work. I know they've done some of that work over on the East Coast, but I'm not as familiar with all of those studies and all that work. I don't think that anything's been determined that would help us find those. I know we are always interested in other novel approaches, things like detector dogs that might be able to find these things during that time period. I don't know also how easy it would be to actually capture them during that brumation period if you're having to dig up huge holes in the hopes that they're in there. So I'm not sure how helpful it would be, but it certainly would be better to know than to not know.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Any other questions? And again, just remember that you're muted.
Yeah, this is Cheryl Millett. I was curious about the response you've gotten for those mailer cards that you sent out. Have you gotten good response from that?
So that's where I'm still a little bit surprised. We have gotten some response, especially in that red circle area, but we haven't gotten much else that's been verified throughout the other parts of the county. So I don't know if that means that there just aren't tegus in those areas, or if I don't know, maybe that for whatever reason the people in that area are already familiar with the problem, and so they're more likely to call us. But that's one of the reasons I'm not sure exactly what the extent of this population is. Certainly we have gotten people reaching out to us, but we haven't gotten anything that suggests that that population has extended far beyond what we're currently working on.
Yeah. Well, I imagine with your outreach to get things on media out there, that would probably widen the circle as well.
That's what we hope, yes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great, thank you. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can always get in touch with Dan through me or through FWC. Thank you again for providing this overview, and just a reminder to everybody, this will be available, should be up on our website by next week for your review as well. So following this, I just have a few updates to share with everybody. I wanted to share some cool work the CISMAs have been doing. We got an update from the Florida Keys Invasive Exotic Task Force on a partner work day they held actually just this past Monday at the Carey's Fort Yacht Club parcel. And they had 9 volunteers that treated 5 different species, 5 different invasive plants. And it was interesting to note that this is a project that the Key Largo Hammock Botanical State Park has been working on since the early 1990s as an upland and wetland restoration effort. And so on the side there, you can see the maps. I believe the top one was from '85, and then the bottom one is a more current day view of the restoration. So they're really happy to have that partnership help in working on these invasive species as they're getting closer and closer to having this habitat restored to the way that they have been working towards. So really cool project going on there. And then also, you guys may have seen the First Coast Invasive Working Group is continuing their beach Vitex efforts. This is still the only known population on the east coast of Florida, established population in St. Johns County. We do know on the west coast that it is quite more established and some pretty big populations there. But on the east coast, as far as we know, this is still very limited. So they had a work day earlier this month on May 1st, and Caitlin Dietz, the co-chair for First Coast Invasive Working Group, is really leading the volunteer workday efforts and working directly with the homeowners involved. And Jessica Spencer, the other co-chair, has done a lot of the outreach work and always following up with some really good photos for us and making sure everybody on the coastal areas are keeping their eyes open for this plant. So you can see on the side, recently she sent out some photos of the the little seedlings that they actually hadn't seen in previous years just due to the timing of their work days. So we got some new good images out of that. And then also just interesting to me, she actually had a request from somebody for a little bit of a history on the project. So she kind of just shared this timeline from when the population was first noticed in 2015. It was from a homeowner who approached Caitlin at the GTM Research Reserve. That led them to realize the population was there, and they've been holding work days ever since, just kind of working away at that population. As you know, and as we've shared, the two hurricanes, Matthew in 2016 and Irma in 2017, really did impact those infested areas, and so we are continuing to try and keep that on, again, those coastal folks' radar, that there's a possibility some seed was spread when those hurricanes hit. They are also seeing some population spread by some construction activities going on at, I believe it was the original location, and so they're keeping an eye on that and continue to reach out to homeowners in the affected area. So again, just some more really cool work going on there. And I just wanted to highlight some upcoming programs. We're getting into the heat of the summer already, and so things are slowing down a little bit, but we do have some stuff coming up. On June 1st, there'll be an FWC Exotic Pet Amnesty Day at the Central Florida Zoo. And so this is Central Florida CISMA is engaged and should have some folks there to help with some education and outreach. On May 30th, the North Central Florida CISMA is hosting an invasive species control workshop, and this is the workshop in partnership with Chris Demers, the Forest Stewardship Program at the University of Florida IFAS. And then on June 26th, we'll be back for our monthly webinar next month. And just a reminder that the full details of these events can be found on our calendar on our website. And then next month, I hope you will join us on Wednesday, June 26th. We are going to get an update on what's going on with lionfish in the state. So definitely due to hear more on that. And that's it for today. I really appreciate everyone calling in and participating. And thanks again to Dan Quinn of FWC for our update on Tegus in Southwest Florida. Just a reminder, we are here the fourth Wednesday of every month at 1:30, except for November and December. Past calls are available on our website, and it usually takes about a week to turn them around, so this one should be up next week. And hopefully you're following us on Facebook at floridainvasives.org, and then we are relatively new to Instagram, or you can find us at protect_Florida. So make sure you're following us there for just updates and information about invasive species across the state. And thanks again, everybody. Look forward to talking to you in June. Have a great afternoon.